Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Millennial Smart, and I'm bringing you the slop, the whole slop, and nothing but the slop. I figure I'll give you guys a little bit more content, at least one more video, because I'm not sure if I'm going to be back tomorrow because I work all day, and not too sure about Sunday also because I work all day that day also. Obviously, if there's any breaking news, I'll make it a point to make a quick little video on it, but this is probably going to be my last long form video, maybe up until Monday. We'll see how it goes. But you guys been looking through the AEW viewership numbers lately? Like, yeah, I'm asking that question like you guys actually do that shit for a living, as if you actually give a fuck. Well, unfortunately, I have a YouTube channel and it's wrestling related, so I have to keep up with the news, right? And I was just curious. I started to scroll through AEW's page because I wanted to see what's the viewership number on the old AEW match between Jon Moxley and Edge that just happened on Wednesday with the stupid spike back bullshit spot, right? And you guys know that video right now, as of right now, it's only been like, what, 3 days? No, I'm sorry, 2 days. It's only been 2 days. Technically a day as of the recording of this video. It hasn't even been a full 48 hours yet. You know that video already has 850,000 views? Now, I only illustrate this point because you guys are probably going to be like, well, Devontae, that's not that big of a deal. WWE typically gets that with at least 1 or 2 videos every week on Raw and SmackDown. Yeah, I understand. But focusing on the AEW context of all this, I only bring that up because I just want to illustrate the point that this is their 4th most viewed video of the entire year so far. Of the entire year, this is their 4th most viewed video. And it got there in less than 2 days. So there's a good shot that it's going to end up being their most viewed video of the year so far. And people only watch the match strictly to see the spot with the 2x4 bat. Everybody wants to react to it, which obviously that's a thing. That's cool. You know, it's content at the end of the day for most people to actually have commentary videos on it. I just seen Steven Richards upload his reaction to the little suplex from the spike bullshit bat spot, right? But I just illustrate this point because, you know, and I kind of want to get you guys' opinions on this, right? Especially more of the older people in the audience. I know some of the younger people can speak on this also, but, you know, more so those people in their late 20s going forward, you know, 28 going forward. I kind of want to get you guys' opinions on this, right? Because we typically on this channel talk about how professional wrestling is right now, how the structure of professional wrestling doesn't necessarily linger as much on storytelling as it used to back in the days, whether that can be because unfortunately wrestling is very lazy nowadays and it feels that the threshold for entertainment is not as high as it used to be when they were concerned with a lot of people outside of their core audience fan base. But then when they're within their core audience fan base, they understand that these people only want to focus on one thing. And obviously, unfortunately, the ethics, the moral code behind these people, when it comes to specifically wrestling, it has to be about the in-ring product, you know, strictly the in-ring product. You remember the post we read yesterday, right? With them focusing on Gunther and then Jey Uso, and they stated that Gunther, if he were to lose the match, it ruins his credibility as a wrestler. You know, the in-ring component. This is what these people focus on nowadays. And, you know, to see this match get, for AEW standards, get so many views in such a short period of time, right? It makes you wonder. It makes you wonder. Are we as wrestling fans, you know, the more older wrestling fans, not necessarily old, but the older wrestling fans, are we out of touch? Now, hear me out when I say this. I don't mean out of touch in the sense that, like, we don't see the positive in what the younger generation are doing. I mean out of touch in the sense that this generation cannot be saved anymore when it comes to professional wrestling. They've made up their mind as far as what they want to see, and that's just the way it is. You know, in the words of Tupac, things will never be the same, right? I see that, and it's such a doomer type of feeling when I see shit like this. You know what I mean? To know that a storyline as fucking terrible as the Dick Riders and Edge over these past few months, that all it really has to do to compensate for the fact that they lacked so much storytelling is that all they have to do is go out there and just perform in the ring. And that in itself makes up for the abysmal storytelling that's been said and done these past few months. Isn't that such a like gloom and doom type of feeling as a wrestling fan? Within the wrestling universe, obviously, you turn off your cell phone, you turn off your television, you live in the real world. Hopefully you're a happy person. But when you're actually watching professional wrestling and you're ensconced within the universe of professional wrestling, isn't it such a gloom and doom feeling knowing that this match actually garnered attention when it didn't deserve it? It didn't deserve it. I'm just going to be honest with you. It didn't deserve it. And the fact of the matter is, I look at AEW and I say to myself, well, Devontae, what was the viewership number? What was the viewership number this week? 658,000. 658,000. You know, that's one of their highest viewership numbers this entire year. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's their second biggest number of the year. I think they had like 679,000 earlier that year, because I think I made a video on that. They had like 679 or 680,000. So this has to be like the second biggest number they did the entire year. But the sad part about it is, and I talk about this all the time just to bring it on home, the fact that 658,000 fans on your flagship brand seeing such a massive decline, and just because you went up, you spiked considerably compared to the last 2 weeks, right? When you were down nearly 60,000 views overall, to see that you get a 60,000 raise in the viewership number, these people they're going to take that. They're going to take that horrible number that would have been all hands on deck about a year ago. They're going to take that number and they're going to say the justification behind that number is because of the matches. You know, they're going to take that number. Tony Khan's going to take that number and he's going to justify the fact that he mid-carded his world championship, and the excuse to mid-card the world championship as far as ruining the prestige of the belt that no one will ever look at as far as it being of a higher caliber considerably, as far as looking at it in comparison to other previous world titles and other different wrestling companies or in different eras. It's such a doom existence right now as a wrestling fan, bruh. I think looking at this match and seeing the viewership number, it's going to get 1 million views before the week is out. It might even get 1 million views by the end of today. To know that this is going to be arguably the most viewed video of the year so far, it's crazy to me that they're probably going to be telling themselves that in order to get viewership numbers like that, they know that they now have in case of an emergency, get the hammer and break the glass, pull out whatever you have to pull out. It's going to be doing stupid fucking hardcore spots. It's going to be doing stupid fucking hardcore spots. It's such a shame. It's such a shame, man. I grew up on professional wrestling where the actual moments were promos, were the skits, were all that stuff. And then that accentuated and it pretty much elevated whatever match they ended up being in. And sometimes the match ended up being so good that it in itself stood on its own. You know what I mean? I want you guys to go back and watch that, what was it? The top 50 moments in Raw history. It was like a DVD from 10 or 15 years ago. Almost nothing on that list had anything to do with the matches in themselves. The only one I could theoretically think about was, off the top of my head, I remember Taker taking the chokeslam from Big Show through the ring on Monday Night Raw, and I remember the Hell in a Cell match from King of the Ring 98. That's it. And those matches in themselves, obviously, well, not so much the chokeslam through the ring stuff, although that was used in order to, you know, boost Big Show up, but the actual Hell in a Cell match is iconic. It was the first thing done. It was the first one done, right? It was so iconic, and it stood on its own, and it was on a pay-per-view. And now they just do that every other week in order to compensate for the fact that they can't go out there and actually make legitimate moments. And then you have people on Twitter and on X who are clamoring for this. You know, they sit here and they cheer this shit on, and you know, they're like ravenous animals waving around a fucking torch and pitchforks, and it's a mob, and they're just like, more of this hardcore stupidity bullshit. We need this. We need more of this. You know, and then you see the Will Ospreay matches, and it's like, I think people confuse wrestling ability with athleticism. You know, when I talk about Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay, for an example, I can easily highlight their athleticism as far as being one of the best in the world as far as wrestling is considered, based off of their athleticism, but that has nothing to do with the actual wrestling ability. You understand where I'm coming from? The wrestling ability, in regards to the psychology, you use that as an excuse, and at least in my opinion, it's somewhat of a misnomer. You use that and conflate it with the actual athleticism. Wrestling ability, or I guess as they say, the psychology of wrestling, what makes a wrestler, is not just the athleticism. The athleticism works, the athleticism helps, but the point of the athleticism is to, once again, this word, accentuate what you're trying to get over. Like Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, WCW, Halloween Havoc, obviously, right? One of the best matches of all time. Or at the very least, at this point, you can't even say that, right? Because so much has been done. One of the most influential matches of all time. You think it was done for rhyme and reason? There was a week to week build for even something as small as a cruiserweight match, right? Eddie just turned heel. You know, he's about to side with Chavo Guerrero to make Rey Mysterio's life a living hell. He wants his mask. That was the whole point of that entire match. And the moves, they're remembered because, one, it was groundbreaking for that time. It was influential for that time. But it was necessitated for the Rey Mysterio character to do all that stuff because he needed to pull all the stops out to beat Eddie Guerrero to avoid losing his mask, right? That was the point behind that. And I think people, they don't take that into consideration. You know, they don't take any of that into consideration. They just pretend that the match in itself, that's all that mattered. That's all that mattered. No, it was Eddie Guerrero putting his Cruiserweight Championship on the line, and it was Rey Mysterio putting his mask up on the line. And it was storytelling building up to that point. That had more reasoning to do the moves in the ring that people remember it by, than compared to Edge and Jon Moxley doing a suplex on a fucking bat. Compared to Will Ospreay flipping out the ring, and Kenny Omega flipping out the ring, and Ricochet flipping out the ring, and Swerve Strickland flipping out the ring. That also, there was more diversity, so they stood out a little bit more. But instead, we get this, and then we get people cheering for it. We get people advocating for it. We get people saying we want more of this. But it's people who are already within the core audience base. And it's like, that's what they want to focus on now. I don't think that there's no argument that can be stated today by anyone outside of the core audience fan base that can resonate with professional wrestling nowadays. I don't think there's anybody. There's no voice. For one, there's too many big voices who go out of their way to confirm this. What the fuck would you call it? Like the wrestling equivalent of an ideology, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, there's too many big voices saying that this is okay. And it's like, you sit back and you say to yourself, like, damn, man. Damn, I remember a time when we used to actually cite what was our favorite feuds before our favorite matches. You can't even do that because these wrestlers, they barely even feud anymore. They just go directly to the matches, and you pull out all the stops in the first match without even making it to like the first week, second week, third week even sometimes. You know, the matches that are typically done, I mean, for fuck's sakes. I mean, what's the guy's name from the Undisputed Kingdom originally? That was with Matt Taven, right? Is that his name? I mean, you got Matt Taven and Orange Cassidy having a Texas Death Match. Remember that? A Texas Death Match on a random episode of Dynamite. A Texas death match, just randomly like that. And it gets even worse because, again, Jon Moxley and Edge, you know, they only had the match that they had tonight, or last night, I guess, or I guess it would have been 2 days ago. They've only had this kind of match because they wanted to make up for how abysmal the last match was on Sunday. Or I guess it would have been last week Sunday at this point. You know that, right? Rather than going out there, telling a story, and then coming back to a pay-per-view and having a legitimate street fight. Well, hell, I'll even say it's not. I think people misunderstand me when I say that I don't like the spot because of the spot and the stuff. I don't like the spot because the match does not call for it. It's not that big of a deal of a match where it has to conclude in that manner. You know what I mean? It does not have to conclude in that manner. It's not that serious. It's not that deep. You know what I mean? Like, even if it were that deep, I still don't think the bat is necessitated, but at least you can make a stronger argument about it to a lesser degree, right? To a lesser degree. As long as it's not something stupid, right? Like the fucking Toni Storm match with Mariah May last week when they had the Hollywood Brawl shit. It was just goofy, and you have all these Hollywood gimmicks around and stupid shit like that. A table with Hollywood written on it while they're doing stupid fucking gimmick spots, and it's just so unnecessary. It's like you play more into the gimmick than you do the story in itself, and that's a huge problem for me. That's a ginormous problem for me. But I just wanted to talk about this because I'm seeing the ratings, and it's actually crazy to me that like we as a community, you know, who are somewhat 1 foot in and 1 foot out of professional wrestling, 1 foot in terms of us actually still wanting to be within the fan base because we still like wrestling. Maybe you don't like the fan base in itself, but you still want to be amongst the community. But 1 foot out because you can't stand to see bullshit like this. It's wild and crazy to me that, you know, you see stuff like this and it's advocated for. It's advocated for. Not story, not feuds, not that. No. This right here. This is what people want to focus on now. It almost black pills you a little bit. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. As always, my name is Devontae, aka Millennial Smart. Hopefully something positive happens coming up in the next few days. Don't want to end out the week like this, but man, that viewership number really got me. They're going to get 1 million views. Probably, again, the most watched match of the year when it has no right to be that. They've only gotten that because they did a stupid fucking spot. And all this does is hurt the boys in the end of the day. Also, it's not just the fans, it hurts the boys because all they're going to try to do is up the ante on the stupidity to get around the fact that they don't have a boss who has enough creative direction to give them something to work with. Or maybe they themselves are self-sabotaging. I don't know. They are all lazy in the end of the day. Probably thinking to themselves that we're workhorses and therefore us as workhorses should be rewarded for the stupid shit that we do. Even though, in reality, we could be getting more views if we're actually legitimate fucking stars. Deuces, P, Ice.